The cemetery sat on the edge of town where the wind always seemed stronger than necessary. Rain drifted sideways, soft enough that nobody opened umbrellas at first, stubborn enough that everyone eventually gave in. Ethan Carter stood a few steps behind the rest of the family, hands buried in the pockets of a dark coat that no longer fit quite right. Mud gathered around polished shoes. People shifted in quiet discomfort, clearing their throats, murmuring memories of his father, William Carter, as though grief sounded more respectable when spoken softly. His older brother Daniel stood near the front beside their aunt and cousins, shoulders straight, accepting condolences with the ease of someone who understood rooms like this. Daniel always understood rooms. Ethan understood exits. Your dad was proud of both of you. An older neighbor said without really looking at Ethan. It felt rehearsed. He nodded anyway. Across the gravesite, Daniel laughed quietly at something a cousin whispered. Not happy laughter, funeral-safe laughter, controlled enough to look respectful. Still, it landed strangely. 3 days earlier, Daniel had flown in from Chicago and somehow become the center of everything immediately, choosing flowers, speaking with funeral staff, correcting timelines about their father's medical decline as though he had been there through it. Ethan had let him. Mostly because correcting people required energy he no longer had, the pastor finished speaking. Chairs scraped softly against wet grass. Relatives formed small circles of sadness and obligation. Ethan stayed near the back. He had spent the previous 18 months driving his father to cardiology appointments every other Thursday. No one here knew that. He had fixed the leaking kitchen sink after midnight because William refused to call a plumber. No one knew that either. The nights after chemotherapy scares, false alarms, thankfully. When Hess sat awake pretending not to be frightened, Ethan had stayed until dawn sometimes. They rarely talked about anything important. Baseball, broken neighbors, old television reruns. William disliked pity. And more than that, he hated looking dependent. Don't tell your brother, he used to say. Daniel worries too loudly. So Ethan didn't. That had seemed respectful at the time. Now it mostly felt lonely. As people slowly turned toward their cars, Daniel appeared beside him. The timing felt intentional. You okay? Daniel asked. It sounded generous until Ethan looked at him. There was something familiar there. The same expression from high school report cards, from holidays, from every conversation where disappointment wore concern as a disguise. Ethan shrugged. Daniel glanced toward the grave. You know, he said quietly, I just wish you'd shown up more for him. Ethan blinked. What? Daniel lowered his voice further. You never really did anything for Dad. The sentence landed harder because it came so calmly, not angry certains. Rain tapped softly against Ethan's coat. For a second, he considered answering, telling him about medication pickups, hospital waiting rooms, the grocery runs after William's knees started failing, the way their father had hidden trembling hands by pretending to rearrange tools in the garage. But saying any of it suddenly felt impossible. Because defending himself would mean exposing the parts of William that had been private, and somehow, even now, betraying that trust felt worse than being misunderstood. So Ethan said nothing. Daniel exhaled through his nose like silence proved something. I'm just saying, he muttered. Don't act surprised people noticed. Then he walked toward the others, and Ethan hated that for a moment. Just a moment. He wondered if maybe Daniel was right. At the reception hall beside the church, people moved through coffee and sandwiches with the awkward hunger funerals always created. Conversations formed around memories Ethan didn't recognize. Daniel's been handling so much, one cousin said nearby. He's holding the family together. Ethan stood near the windows watching rain gather on parked cars. Nobody asked how he was. Nobody asked where he had been these past 2 years. The old role fit too easily. The son who never quite became what people expected, the failed business, the divorce, the unfinished life. He considered leaving, quickly before anyone noticed. Excuse me. A voice cut through the room, measured, professional. Family conversations paused. Near the entrance stood Michael Reynolds, his father's attorney, holding a slim leather folder against his chest. Most people recognize him vaguely from estate paperwork years ago. Daniel stepped forward first. Everything okay? Michael gave a polite nod. There's something your father specifically requested happen after the burial. The room changed, not dramatically, just enough. Chairs stopped moving. Coffee cups lowered. Michael opened the folder carefully. William left a personal letter to be read in front of immediate family. Daniel folded his arms. Ethan looked down. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, then began. If this letter is being read, it means I finally ran out of time. A few strained smiles surfaced. I know funerals make people rewrite history, so I'd like to correct a few things while I still technically can. That sounded like William dry guarded. Then Michael continued, Daniel, I love you. You've always stepped forward loudly when things got difficult. Daniel gave a small nod. But then, Ethan stepped forward quietly. The room stilled. Ethan looked up. The last years of my life were easier because Ethan carried burdens I asked him not to talk about. Appointments, repairs, long nights when I wasn't feeling particularly brave. No one moved. He protected my dignity even when it cost him his own reputation. Something sharp tightened in Ethan's throat. Michael paused before continuing. I regret not defending him more openly. I allowed assumptions to become habits. Across the room, Daniel's posture shifted small, almost imperceptible. Families confuse visibility with loyalty. They are not the same thing. The silence afterward felt heavier than grief. Then came the practical part. In accordance with William Carter's estate instructions, Michael said carefully, Ethan Carter has been appointed executor. A beat passed. Nobody spoke. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was undeniable. Daniel looked at Ethan for the first time all afternoon without certainty. No apology arrived. No scene followed. Only discomfort. The kind that settles when people realize they participated in something unfair without ever intending to. Later, Ethan sat alone inside his car while rain softened against the windshield. The folded copy of the letter rested in his hands. He read one line twice. You deserved more credit than I knew how to give. It wasn't enough. Not really. The hurt stretched too far back for that. But for the first time in years, Ethan stopped feeling invisible. Outside, people slowly left the cemetery parking lot. Inside the quiet of the car, he let himself sit there a little longer before starting the engine.